so that they can be shared afterwards to be broadcast to others in the LOTI community who are interested. So just please be aware of that. But very pleased to welcome you to this show and tell, where we are looking particularly at some work that LOTI has been doing with boroughs on innovation in procurement. Right from our sort of very early days, when we've first started, innovation in procurement was identified as being a real priority for London boroughs, given oftentimes they've been quite unhappy about the level of service or value that they've had from some traditional suppliers who've served the sector, and have been really keen to say, how do they make sure they can work with suppliers who really enable them to deliver their digital ambitions, and particularly to make it easier for smaller, perhaps more innovative companies to engage in public sector procurement. We know often it can be quite difficult to navigate, quite hard for SMEs and startups to understand, and so we've been doing a lot of work on that front. Just to give a couple of words of context about the work we've done to date. Number one is that we worked with the GovTech Accelerator Public to create an innovation in procurement toolkit. And perhaps my colleague Onyeka can share that link in the chat for those of you who'd like to check it directly. But what we have done there is try to pull together the best guidance, tips, and resources on what you can change at each stage of the procurement process in order to increase your chances of getting a broad range of suppliers responding to your tenders, and also to ensure that rather than just re-procuring the same types of thing again and again, that we phrase our requirements in a much more outcomes-based fashion, which enables a broader range of suppliers to say, well, had you thought of solving that problem or achieving that outcome in this way that you might not have thought about before? We will shortly be turning this into a sort of more visually stimulating guide that you'll be able to find directly on the LOTI website. But in the meantime, you can see this prototype version, which is hosted on a platform called Notion. Please do check it out if you haven't seen it yet. Another thing that we will be doing is, based on that guide, is setting up a regular forum to bring boroughs together so that we can start spotting opportunities to implement that guidance on specific procurements. So every 2 months, our plan is to get borough ICT leads, procurement leads together so that we look at what they're likely to be procuring over the next year to 18 months, discuss any challenges they're having with particular products or particular suppliers, and just have a really constructive conversation about what we can do together. When we find those opportunities, we'll then kick off a 6-stage process to say, for example, if we found a few boroughs who all want to work on a new waste management solution, we would work with them to understand the market, map their user needs, define their shared objectives, engage with suppliers, agree a common tender specification, and then decide on the best procurement approach. And you're going to hear more about exactly that process that we're doing with housing services with Franco from Hounslow in just a moment. And lastly, all of this, we really want to build those proactive relationships with suppliers. And so on a periodic basis, we'll be making sure we can expose boroughs to the best in class in each particular sector. Anyway, enough of the background. Now very pleased to hand over to Franco, who's the Digital Strategy and Service Lead at Hounslow, to talk about applying exactly that process to housing services procurement. Franco, over to you.
Thanks, Eddie, and really good to be with you all this morning. So I've been asked to just give share an overview of our work to date on this kind of new innovative approach, the kind of approach that Eddie's just outlined. So in Hounslow, we were part of the LOTI sessions last year, which put together a number of councils who were interested in housing and replacing our housing system. But really, we're looking at doing this in a much more in a way which really optimizes digital customer experience and really enables, supports changing ways of working and really supports this kind of completely new approach to how we offer services and no longer necessarily being tied into the big housing service management system providers, but being able to be much more innovative in terms of how we provide digital services at the front end, change ways of working across the services to really optimize that customer experience and really drive through benefits and efficiency savings for the council. So just a couple of slides, not doing death by PowerPoint, but we set up a thing called a housing group, and this is very much following on from the groundwork, which was really well laid through LOTI and with Public's help, and we've identified there's initially three. Well, there were a bunch of about 12 councils who were really interested in adopting this approach of housing and had a need over the next year to 2 years. There are three of us at the moment working closely together to really make this happen, because we have the kind of most urgent timelines, but we're doing this very much as an open approach. So we set up a thing called a housing group. It's collaborative working through those kind of key elements that Eddie's outlined there, and it's, as it says there, the purpose is to really agree and deliver a shared procurement exercise using this outcomes-based approach. And certainly in Hounslow, this is a kind of very much a new thing for us. We've talked about our outcomes and looked at mapping how we map onto our corporate outcomes that we're trying to achieve, but really working this through is a new thing for us, and it's a very fundamental shift, I think, in the way of thinking, where I think each of the councils that we're working with, we know we're having to take the service owners on that journey with us. So really, this is just a few thoughts on that I'm sharing this morning, but at the heart of it, it is really about being innovative in our approach, seeking to use the strengths we've got, but also be open to new solutions, smaller providers, and not just simply find ourselves locked into another 5+ years contract with one of the traditional suppliers. What we came to in a nutshell from a number of sessions was a kind of hybrid approach, where we're recognizing that at least for the councils concerned, we all have a very common set of needs when it comes to housing management systems, and a tenant or a landlord or even somebody who's going through homelessness needs has a very similar set of needs, regardless of which borough they're in. So we want to be very much understanding and recognizing the user needs in this, but also there's a recognition that beneath that, in terms of the core functionality, there's a real similarity in terms of the system needs across the council. So we've come up with a hybrid approach where we're looking to procure in a collaborative way a core housing management system that meets those core needs, but also provides the flexibility to tailor and really design, if you like, the front end of those services so that they integrate efficiently with the back end system, but very much tailored to individuals' user needs across those key areas. So we set off on this journey with a number of councils, and we've continued to work with LOTI and Public, and the main aims of that are really sharing our learning from user experience across our councils. There's an awful lot of knowledge and insights in there, and we've already uncovered a significant amount of that. So we're looking at sharing that initial learning, identifying any gaps there are in our understanding of the user needs or user experience, and building that in, so that this will really inform how we articulate this outcome-based approach. And we're finding ourselves doing a lot of thinking together as a group and with our various services about what does this really mean, the outcome-based approach, what we're finding it has the biggest kind of traction for us is to really take it up a level from how we traditionally kind of think about procurement, and really focus on what are we trying to achieve from these digital solutions, and focusing on how does that map onto the the broader outcomes we're achieving, whether that's for homelessness or for tenancy services or landlords. So really taking that top level approach, and we're reaching out in this procurement, not so much for a system supplier, but really for seeing them more as a kind of ongoing delivery partner. So reaching out to them with this outcomes based set of needs that we've articulated, and asking them how their products or systems can help solve that problem. There are some fundamental aspects in there that we want to reach out to companies who are offering web-based solutions, and increasingly we're finding that the big players these days are offering open APIs. So there is much more flexibility. We see, our initial impression is there's much more flexibility in how we can buy bespoke products in and integrate those on the front end of those. So really the purpose of the group is we're going through this collaborative exercise over the next 2-3 months, which will new approach looks like, and actually write it. Putting pen to paper is always the test of these things. And then we want to engage with the market, not only for housing management system, but for the there's an array of innovative new smaller providers out there. I've put up an outline plan here, very much this is very much a work in progress, of very early stages of this, but it kind of shows you the key elements of our thinking over the next 3 to 4 months, and that is, I won't go through them line by line, but that's just reinforcing those kind of key elements that you've seen from Eddie's presentation: the user-centered focus, the articulation of the outcomes base, the outcomes we're seeking to achieve from this, and how that then feeds through into the actual procurement specification. We also still need, of course, to define the technical and the performance requirements of the system, and that will all still be part of the document, but the whole approach will be a much kind of lighter document that engages with the market. And subject to us all working that through and agreeing that, we're aiming to take this to market around March, and really hold some open engagement innovation events with suppliers of all sizes, and ultimately set up a dynamic procurement process for all those, to enable us to buy in all those front end solutions, as each council sees fit. So it's putting our collective strength together where that has a big impact, and equally allowing the flexibility, as you said, for the other aspects. That slide just shows our partners. We're very open to broadening that, and LOTI are very much core to that, and reaching out to other people. And we're also being advised by the Crown Commercial Service, which is a really important aspect of this. So bringing all those partners together and having that early engagement with the market, and that user-centered focus is kind of the running themes through this. I think that's it in terms of the slides I had. Is that right? I think there's any more.
It is indeed. So
sorry, I've been a bit of a monologue, but I'm happy to take any questions on that, or thoughts.
Thank you, Franco. Much appreciated. Yes, anyone with any questions? And if so, please do just raise your hand, or in fact, we're a relatively small group this morning, so feel free to shout it out.
No, that was interesting. Thank you. And I will pass it on to my commissioning and procurement team for them to follow up.
Thank you, Karen. That was much appreciated.
I'd only put a caveat to that the plan we're working on is very much indicative, and we're working on it. So just don't take that as a
No problem.
at this stage, but you're happy to lens elsewhere as well.
Any other questions? If not, thank you everyone for your time this morning, and please do check out on the LOTI website. We've got our innovation in procurement project page. You can find all the latest information about what we're up to there, and on our resources page you'll find various different sort of templates, tools and guides relevant to this particular area. We've mentioned in the chat already the innovation in procurement guide and some templates of tender and contract wording for ensuring suppliers give you data access. So there'll be a lot more along those lines to come in due course. And Franco, we look forward to working with you and your colleagues on this project, and thank you for presenting this morning.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks for
thank you,
joining.
everyone.